They thought it was a harmless joke, a playful nudge, a moment of awkward entertainment to lighten a bright afternoon. They never imagined that by the end of that day, the laughter would die in their throats, Their assumptions would crumble, and a quiet, single mother they barely noticed would change everything they thought they understood about strength, dignity, and second chances. If you believe in kindness and the power of second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Deep Night Stories. Your support keeps stories like this alive. It was a clear Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight pours generously over the world as if trying to make up for all the darkness it has ever seen. The annual Spring Family Fair at Brookfield Community Park buzzed with life. Children raced between food stalls with sticky fingers and painted faces. Parents balanced paper cups of lemonade and plastic plates of barbecue while trying to keep track of runaway sneakers and squealing laughter. There were balloons tied to every bench and folding chairs arranged in neat rows near the small outdoor stage, where a local band tuned their instruments. Rowan Hale stood near the edge of the picnic area, slightly apart from the crowd, one hand resting protectively on his 7-year-old daughter Ivy's shoulder. He was 36, broad-shouldered with tired blue eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights. His wedding ring was gone, but the pale imprint of it still marked his finger like a memory that refused to fade. 2 years had passed since the accident that took his wife, and yet Rowan still moved through the world as if he were bracing for impact. He had come to the fair for Ivy. She deserved laughter and sunshine and cotton candy, even if he still felt out of place among couples who leaned into each other so naturally. Rowan had learned how to braid hair from online tutorials. He packed school lunches with careful precision. He attended parent-teacher meetings alone and sat in the back, nodding politely at sympathetic smiles. Being a single father wasn't something he complained about. It was simply the shape his life had taken. Across the park, Marisella Quinn adjusted the strap of her worn leather purse and glanced down at her son, Theo, who clutched her hand with quiet trust. Marisella was 34. Her dark hair tied in a low, practical bun. There was a softness in her features that hinted at warmth, but her eyes carried something deeper, an alertness born from years of having to anticipate every possible hardship before it arrived. She wore a simple pale blue blouse and faded jeans, the kind of outfit that blended into a crowd without drawing attention. She had almost not come to the fair. Money was tight. Time was tighter. Since her divorce 3 years earlier, she had worked 2 jobs, one at a small bookstore in the mornings and another doing remote administrative work at night after Theo slept. Most days, exhaustion followed her like a shadow, but Theo had seen the flyer at school and begged her to go. She could not afford the expensive rides or elaborate games, but she could afford to give him a few hours under an open sky. Marisella and Rowan noticed each other only in passing at first, the way strangers sometimes register another solitary adult among families of 2. There was a flicker of recognition in that shared aloneness, but it was fleeting. Near the lemonade stand, a small group of parents, mostly mothers who volunteered regularly for school events, had gathered with plastic cups in hand. They watched Rowan from a distance with open curiosity. He was kind and attentive, but distant, polite but reserved. They had tried, gently, to draw him into conversation over the past year, suggesting play dates and group dinners. He always declined with a soft smile. When Marisella arrived with Theo, those same parents turned their attention toward her. She was new to the district. Theo had transferred schools mid-year, and rumors had floated around about a difficult divorce, about financial strain, about how she kept to herself. One of the women laughed lightly and said it would be interesting to seat the 2 single parents together at the long picnic table near the stage, just for fun, just to see what would happen. It wasn't cruel in their minds, only mischievous. They imagined awkward small talk, maybe a spark, maybe something to gossip about later. Without asking either of them, they rearranged a few name cards placed on the reserve section of the picnic table, meant for parents who had donated to the fair. Rowan had donated quietly in Ivy's name. Marisella had contributed a small box of used children's books from the store where she worked. Their names ended up side by side when the midday announcements began and families were invited to take their seats for the community lunch. Rowan found Ivy tugging him toward the reserved table. Marisella followed Theo to the same place, confusion flickering across her face when she saw her name card positioned next to a man she didn't know. They exchanged polite smiles as they sat down, their children settling on the opposite side of the table. Around them, the group of parents pretended not to watch. The first few minutes were stiff. Rowan commented on the weather. Marisella nodded and mentioned how much Theo had been looking forward to the face-painting booth. Their voices were careful, guarded. Both had been, through enough to treat new people like fragile glass. But then Ivy accidentally knocked over her lemonade, and Theo, without hesitation, handed her his napkins and offered half of his own drink. The children began to talk, first shyly, then with growing excitement over shared interests in dinosaurs and space rockets. Their laughter was unfiltered and genuine. Rowan and Marisella watched the children, and something softened in both of them. They spoke more naturally now, about bedtime routines and school projects, and the quiet ache of being the only adult in the house after dark. They did not share details of their pasts, but there was understanding in the pauses between words. From a distance, the observing parents felt satisfied. The joke seemed to be working. They saw two single adults talking and assumed they were witnessing the beginning of something romantic. They whispered and smiled and nudged each other. What they did not know was that Marisella's life was far more complex than they could imagine. That afternoon, just as the band began to play and the scent of grilled corn filled the air, a sleek black car pulled up near the entrance of the park. It did not fit the casual, family-friendly setting. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out, scanning the area with urgency before approaching the picnic tables. Marisella saw him first. Her posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Rowan noticed the shift in her expression and followed her gaze. The man approached and addressed her with unmistakable respect, his voice low but intense. He spoke of a board meeting that had been rescheduled unexpectedly, of a crisis requiring her immediate attention, of investors waiting on her decision. The surrounding parents fell silent. They had assumed Marisella was just another struggling single mother trying to make ends meet. They had seen her thrift store jeans and sim, plea blouse, and built an entire story around them. They had no idea that Marisella Quinn was the majority shareholder and newly appointed interim CEO of a rapidly growing tech company that specialized in educational software for underserved schools. After her divorce, she had stepped away from public life to protect her son from media scrutiny and to rebuild the company quietly. After her ex-husband's financial misconduct nearly destroyed it, she had chosen to live modestly, to work in a bookstore she loved, to experience ordinary life without headlines or expectations. The man in the suit handed her a tablet displaying urgent reports. Marisella's eyes moved quickly across the screen. Calm and analytical, she asked precise questions, her voice now carrying authority that felt almost unrecognizable compared to the gentle mother at the picnic table moments earlier. The parents who had orchestrated the seating arrangement stared in disbelief. The joke had dissolved into something heavier, shame, perhaps. Rowan felt something different. He did not look impressed or intimidated. He looked thoughtful. He saw not the title or the car or the suited assistant, but the way Marisella glanced at Theo before responding, the way her hand instinctively reached for her son's shoulder as if to reassure him that nothing was more important than his sense of security. She made a decision within minutes, issuing instructions that would stabilize the company until Monday. Then, she handed the tablet back and told the man she would not be attending the emergency meeting in person. She had promised her son a day at the fair, and she intended to keep that promise. The rest could wait until morning. When the car drove away, the silence at the table felt almost sacred. The whispers began again, but they were different now, less amused or uncertain. The parents who had laughed earlier avoided. At eye contact, Marisella sat back down slowly. For a moment, vulnerability flickered across her face. as if she regretted the exposure. She had worked hard to build a life where she was simply Theo's mother, not a headline or a cautionary tale. Rowan spoke quietly, not asking intrusive questions, not offering flattery. He simply said that it must be difficult to carry so much responsibility and still show up fully for a child. His words were steady, free of judgment. Something inside Marisella shifted. For years, people had either underestimated her or admired her from a distance. Very few had acknowledged the weight she carried as a mother first. The afternoon continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The parents who had once treated them like characters in a light-hearted social experiment now saw them as individuals shaped by unseen battles. As the sun climbed higher and children lined up for the sack race, Ivy insisted that Theo join her team. Rowan and Marisella stood side by side at the edge of the field, cheering as the children stumbled and laughed their way to an imperfect victory. In that bright daylight, surrounded by noise and color, two weary adults felt something unfamiliar. Hope that companionship did not have to mean replacing the past or proving anything to anyone. It could simply mean standing next to someone who understood. Over the following weeks, they crossed paths more often, not because of a joke or a scheme, but because their children had formed an easy friendship. Study sessions turned into shared dinners. Rowan discovered that Marisella loved old poetry and strong black coffee. Marisella learned that Rowan played the guitar late at night when memories grew too loud. They spoke of loss and betrayal carefully, without dramatics. Rowan described the hollow silence after the hospital room emptied. Marisella shared how she had rebuilt her company from near ruin, while navigating a custody battle that threatened to take Theo away. Each story carried scars, but also resilience. The community began to see them differently, not as subjects of gossip, but as examples of quiet strength. The parents who had once laughed now volunteered at the educational outreach program Marisella's company funded. They apologized, awkwardly but sincerely, for making assumptions. Rowan and Marisella did not rush into declarations of love. Their connection unfolded slowly, like sunrise spreading across a horizon that had known too many storms. They built trust in small gestures, shared coffee, school recitals, evenings where the children played in the yard, while they talked about nothing extraordinary at all. One evening, as golden light filtered through the trees in Rowan's backyard, Ivy and Theo sat on the grass, building a cardboard rocket ship. Rowan watched them, his heart unexpectedly light. He realized that grief no longer felt like a wall separating him from the world. It felt like a bridge that had led him to someone who understood broken places. Marisella stood beside him, her expression thoughtful. She confessed that for years she had believed she needed to be invulnerable to survive. Sitting at that picnic table weeks earlier, placed there as a joke, had reminded her that vulnerability could be strength. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment and share if it has touched your heart so far. Stories like these remind us that the smallest acts, kind or careless, can change lives in ways we never expect. The day the fair returned the following spring, Brookfield Community Park looked much the same. Bright banners, laughter, sunlight pouring across open fields. But something fundamental had shifted. This time, Rowan and Marisella arrived together, not because anyone arranged it, but because they chose to. Ivy had stayed quiet, and Theo ran ahead, confident and carefree. The parents who once whispered greeted them warmly, not with curiosity, but with respect. There were still challenges. Blending families required patience. Balancing corporate crises with school projects demanded flexibility. Grief did not disappear. It transformed. But in facing those challenges together, they discovered that love born from shared resilience carried a different kind of depth. As the band began to play once more, Rowan reached for Marisella's hand in the open daylight, not hiding, not hesitant. She squeezed back, her eyes reflecting both the strength of the woman who had rebuilt an empire and the tenderness of the mother who had chosen to stay at a picnic table instead of rushing to a boardroom. They had been seated together as a joke. They rose together as partners. And to anyone watching who feels overlooked, underestimated, or defined, by a single chapter of their life. Remember this: you are more than the assumptions placed on you. You are more than your hardest day. Sometimes, the seat meant to embarrass you becomes the place where your future quietly begins. If this story moved you, if it reminded you to treat strangers with kindness and to believe in unexpected second chances, please engage with the video. Share your thoughts and support Deep Night Stories. Your encouragement helps these stories reach hearts that may need them most. Kindness is never wasted. Second chances are never foolish. And sometimes, the brightest beginnings happen in the middle of an ordinary sunlit afternoon.